It's now my pleasure to introduce our Colonel, General Hal Moore.
Thank you, folks, for that warm response. I should reserve it for the real heroes and the real heroes who fought in those battles. I've been asked to give you a few minutes only on our recent trip to Vietnam. There were 8 of us, more or less, who went over there and went back to the Ia Drang Valley. I was the most important man there. Went with us was Sergeant Major Plumley, Sergeant Savage went, Bill Beck, machine gunner out of 1st and 7th Cav, George Forrest went with us, Larry Gwynn, Joe Galloway. Did I forget anybody?
Aaron and Nadal.
Oh yeah. Right. And two of my company commanders in X-Ray, John Herron, B Company, and Tony Nadal out of A Company. And I've been asked to give all of you just a few brief words on that trip. Won't take long. Those of you who know me well know that one of my principles is that if you don't have a dream in life, you're dead in the water. You got to have a dream. And Joe Galloway and I have had 2 dreams for probably 28 years. One dream was to write that book, which is on the tables of many of you now. We did that. As part of that dream, we wanted to make this a historiography of the men. Look in their own words what they did. We also wanted to include a chapter on the survivors of the men who were killed. We also wanted to go back to Vietnam, to the battlefield, with the enemy commanders who fought against us. Before the book came out, we didn't get back to the battlefield, although we did talk to the enemy commanders. But we realized that other dream a couple, 3 weeks ago when we went back into LZ Xray and LZ Albany. The 2 ABC TV crews and the men I've just mentioned. I'm going to talk briefly about our return to X-ray and give you a couple of snapshots on my reactions and emotions. We went in a Russian helicopter, piloted by 3 Vietnamese Army pilots. The last trip in there, I went in a Huey, piloted by Bruce Crandall. So it was some kind of an emotional roller coaster to load up on that bird and head for the Ia Drang. I was behind the cockpit with a map. Being a Huey pilot, not too many hours, but I do. Sergeant Major Plumley taught me how to read a map. But we got over the Ia Drang, and I pointed this way and that way and guided these Vietnamese into the landing zone called X-Ray. And we hit it bingo, right on the spot, and ironically, that bird landed, I'll swear, if not on the spot where I landed in the lead chopper that day in the assault, it was very, very close, within feet. And as in all air assaults, after the initial chopper noise dies away, there's quiet. If it's a cold LZ, as it was for a while in LZ Xray. My initial impression of LZ Xray upon this return after 28 years was its beauty. It looks like a park. And the dry creek bed was no longer dry. tail end of the monsoon season, and it was running water. New brush, new elephant grass, the trees were bigger, but we could still see the scars of battle on the savaged tree trunks and trees that were blown down halfway from the top. Foxholes were largely gone, and they had turned into what Bill Beck, who was with us, called flower pots. There was about a foot of water in the bottom of each one, and out of this water was growing luxuriant tropical vegetation, wildflowers in some cases. And Beck said to me, Bill Beck, he was an artist, very sensitive man to everything. He looked at me as we looked at those wildflowers, and he said, even in this terrible place, there is beauty. Typical Beck. There were a few unexploded rounds of ordnance laying around, and we quickly discovered those we could see and avoided them. I walked the perimeter. I walked it 2 or 3 times. General An, my opposing commander, then a lieutenant colonel also, was with us on the ground. With one of his colonels, who was then a lieutenant rifle company commander, who fought against us there. And another full colonel who was his operations officer in the 66th Regiment. And these guys were real professionals. We got along with them very well. Professional to professional. They had their logs and maps, and we exchanged information on tactics. And after 2 or 3 days together on the buses, riding all over Vietnam, we had gotten to know each other pretty well. And after a while in Xray, we formed a circle and put our arms around each other. All of us who were present there, the ABC folks, all the veterans, including the Vietnamese, in uniform, with pith helmets. We bowed our heads for 2 minutes of silence in respect to the dead of both sides who had fallen in that terrible place. And after we had broken up the circle, I was taken completely by surprise by General An. He walked over to me and threw both of his arms around me in an embrace and kissed me on both cheeks. That amazed me. It was the first in my life. And he extended his hand, and I shook it. Some Americans would not understand that, but as Joe Galloway, my blood brother for 28 years, has said, we are all soldiers at heart. And he's got it dead on. We spent the night there because we were weathered in. General An and the Vietnamese officers and some of the veterans were lifted out on the first lift back to Clay Coup. Then the weather closed in, and a few of us, in my view, very fortunately, were on the ground overnight. We were soaked by the monsoon rains before dark. I mean, literally. Boots, clothing, everything.
Tell the truth, Hal. You arranged it with God.
Well, I must confess that I had prayed for that opportunity. And it was a real experience to walk around, check the positions at night. Most of the men went to sleep, and I stayed up. Once in a lifetime, I couldn't sleep. All the memories came flooding back. beautiful night. Stars were out, meteors, shooting stars, constantly. And Bill Beck, once again, that great sensitive soldier, he got up and he stood there just like this for an hour and a half, just looking and thinking. Well, I can tell you that I had a good feeling about returning. And my feeling when I was there for a while, and certainly when I left, was that Xray is now a restful place. And I believe in my heart that the souls, the spirits of those who died there are completely at rest. And that comforts me. Now, I've told you about the two dreams. A few minutes later, I'll tell you about a promise that Joe and I made to each other also. But now I have a third dream. I'm going to go back to Xray, and there's going to be a monument there. I'm going to make that happen. And the Vietnamese general, An, the province chief, when we said farewells, I broached that idea. And they all, I thought, they don't like that idea. But they were humorously shaking their heads, and through the interpreter I learned that they had already thought of it. Now, I'm not going to go back there if they have a monument with a sign which degrades the 1st Cavalry Division and the great soldiers who fought there. And I'm going to tell them that. And by now, having gone over there 3 times, they realize I have no hidden agenda, no objective to revolutionize the country on a 7-day visa. And I believe that they believe what I say, maybe 60, 70% of it. There's still some defensiveness. But I'm going to get there, and Joe Galloway has halfway committed to go with me.
Next year. The year after next.
Year after next.
And I'll tell Joe that I will arrange it this time. It will not be in the monsoon season. That completes my remarks on our visit, and all of us who went there are available for questions later on when we break up. Thank you.
You know, in all military organizations, you always have backups, you know. And in this trip to Vietnam, there was a backup, and I would happen to be a member of that backup party, and I too got to go to Vietnam. And I'd like Tim Miller to come up now and tell us about, tell you about our trip.
I say again, John, I'm very happy to be here with you tonight.
Well, you should.
We had an A team and a B team, and you just heard an excellent report from General Moore about the A team. They had a very specific agenda, and it was a very special trip for them. But when my first tour with the CAV ended in the fall of '69, I thought I'd be back for my second tour in about a year. I never thought it would take 24 years. I certainly never thought I'd fly into Hanoi instead of Tan Son Nhut. At the CAV Association reunion this summer, I was asked by Art Juneau and Bob Lytle if I wanted to go back to check out one of the tour companies looking for our business on future tours to be sponsored by the association. At first it sounded like just one slot might be available, and I had no idea if the rest of the group would be 25 former nurses, 85 evac, or 100 jarheads. About a week later, I found out that 10 seats would be used by General Moore and the Xray and Albany men who were part of the ABC project, and that 7 more seats were still available. I was told I could try to help fill the seats, so I immediately called the first dozen phone numbers I could find in the mess I call an office. And a frantic calling network over the next couple of weeks resulted in a crew being selected. Sadly, not everyone who wanted to go could take vacation on short notice, cut classes, raise the money, or get a passport fast enough to apply for the visa. Joe Galloway, the A-team, as we call it, sent me a fact-filled letter of recommendations which I forwarded to our group. And that group was composed of John Settlin, John Wallenhuse, John Howard, Paul Mobley, Danny Robinson, and a couple of snake eaters who were just terrific to poke fun at for 2 weeks. We took off from Los Angeles on October 12th with a send-off from John Baca, Ronnie Slias, and Nancy Wallenhuse. The flight went to Japan in about 11 hours, then about 5 more hours to Bangkok for a brief overnight rest stop, no more than 4 hours sleep before we started to Hanoi. At the airport in Hanoi, the A and the B team split for the 30-kilometer drive into the city to 2 different government guest houses, and we didn't meet again until a busy week later in Ia Drang. By amazing coincidence, our guide in Hanoi, Tuan, had met John Baca in 1990 when John was there to help build a clinic. We were even able to visit the clinic on our way into Hanoi. We spent a full day sightseeing in Hanoi with most of us blowing a buck or two on those green NVA pith helmets. We visited the Revolutionary Museum where the bronze plaque from the U.S. Embassy in Saigon is displayed, along with political, social, cultural, and military history items. The Air Force Museum, run by a former colonel of the 320th Regiment, who shyly admitted to us that his long separations from home were made more bearable by a girlfriend in Pleiku. The museum is full of displays of relics of the air war in the North. None, I think, more poignant to me than the 8 or 10 battered flight helmets lined up in a case like cracked eggs in a carton. The yard outside is littered with B-52 engines, a wrecked F-4 Phantom, and pieces of helicopters and fat bird dogs. Then we visited the Hanoi Hilton, still used as a prison, with its walls topped by jagged glass set in cement. Anyone who's ever been inside the Pentagon would be shocked at the simple house on stilts where Ho Chi Minh made the decisions we all felt. An artillery shell hangs from a rope in the garden to sound the air raid alarm so that Uncle Ho could slip into his deep bomb shelter. Unfortunately, Uncle Ho himself was not available for viewing in his mausoleum. Every September and October, his corpse goes to Russia for its CMMI. Leaving Hanoi at the airport, waiting for our flight to Da Nang and Pleiku, we were shocked to see a U.S. Air Force C-130 land and unload an American crew. A local newspaper confirmed that it was part of the casualty resolution process. Although our guide in Pleiku was a 42-year veteran NVA colonel, we didn't have the clout to get the B team into Xray in Albany. But we saw Kateka Tea Plantation and the Playmee Special Forces Camp instead. In addition to numerous 50 caliber and M60 belt links and spent bullets, we too nearly stumbled onto .M79 rounds. John Settlin will show you a picture of somebody's foot about an inch from a 500-pound bomb fin. Any of us wandering too far was called back sharply with a warning that 5 people die there from this sort of stuff that's still laying around. The local guides had planned another 2 days in Pleiku, but since we couldn't go into the Ia Drang ourselves, we met with our guide, Colonel Vine, and made the first of many modifications to the planned itinerary. We left Pleiku for An Khe on Highway 19 over the Mangyang Pass. But we drew a blank there too, only able to see the southwest slope of Hong Kong Mountain, and not the golf course area at all. One older woman where we stopped seemed thrilled to see a calf patch I gave her, and she put on a nice jacket so we could take her picture. Again, we've all got, most of us have a lot of pictures of these memories, so we'll be I'm glad to share them with you later. Over at Quin Yon, for the trip down the coast on Highway 1, the squalor of the larger city was readily apparent in the piles of human waste left on what could have been a beautiful beach. Again, we changed the plan after we discovered that there was absolutely nothing left at Bongsan. Tuiwa was also filthy, without electricity when we got there, and posting swarms of flies and warm beer. To be honest, there are beautiful scenes of the ocean, the mountains, the rice paddies, and the offshore islands driving down the coast. But up close and personal, the country is still very rough around the edges. The train was excellent. We stayed an extra night, electing to fly to Saigon instead of driving to Kana, where apparently the electricity in the hotel is shut off at 10 p.m. Tired toward the end of a long trip, we still look forward to Saigon, now Ho Chi Minh City. On the last leg, we were like horses making a run for the barn. Since we only had one full day, we chose not to go to the tunnels of Cu Chi, but planned a tour of several museums. However, as soon as we made a stop at the Caravel Hotel, 5 of our team bolted from the van like school kids and disappeared around the corner. While John Wallenuse went in to try and give Jack Smith everybody's videotapes, hoping ABC could smuggle them out with their journalist visas. When Red Fred, our ex-VC guide, said no, all tape had to be inspected, John envisioned a trip back to the Hanoi Hilton. When they saw things they might not have wanted us to tape, like some anti-aircraft guns at Pleiku, or heard our earthy commentary on the sanitation. Abandoning the tapes on the front desk of the Caravel, John and I went outside and just walked around the block and tried and come up with a solution. Not coming up with one, we kept going and soon were caught up in the crowds on the former Tudo Street, now Dong Khoi Street. We let poor Trapper at the Caravel, figuring he'd be fine with the A-team, rather than be put under house arrest once Red Fred realized we'd all flown the coop. He was taken back to our hotel under armed guard and told to stay in his room. To make a long day short, John Wallenuse and I explored Saigon, having a huge shrimp and beer lunch at one of the floating restaurants on the river. After I added a tip to the bill of 283,000 dong, getting rid of the last of the funny money, I zipped my wallet up in the belt pack I was wearing. 2 hours later, back at the Caravel, I realized that the wallet was gone, along with passport, entry-exit card, customs declaration, and my plane ticket home. The rest of the night and the next morning cannot be described in the next 30 seconds. But these 2 documents, with Vietnamese hand scratching on it, police reports, statements from Ha Van Long, who signed the Paris Peace Agreement, were all that got me out of country. I'll just close by telling you it was a fascinating second tour. Talk about being shot at and missed, and while not everyone's cup of Kateka tea, the adventuresome among you would find it a wonderful contrast to your last tour in Vietnam. Within a week or so, I believe the association is going to do a mailing in the annual calendar offering, and there'll be a brief description of what we hope we can plan to be a safe and sane tour that some of you might enjoy in the future. Thanks very much.